changes, astronomically impossible changes as far as human beings are concerned, and as far as our planet's concerned, and computers and everything else. So, anyways, I'm hoping this is streaming. It looks like it's been streaming. Yeah. All right. Cool. So it's streaming. So, all right. Enough of that garbage. So let's get into why I decided to write and compile a short story collection. Maybe this will help a lot of you looking to do so yourself. One of the things I noticed about short story collections is that they're very hard to publish because they're a hard sell, right? So there's not a whole lot of emotional investment that readers get when reading a short story collection like they would a novel. So a novel is a better sell because we have characters we can invest in, situations, worlds, universes, technologies, ideas, and so on. But short fiction is kind of a tough sell because it's hard to sell, one, professionally. Two, it is hard to find publishers that are willing to talk to you seriously about having a, how do I want to say it, a piece published like this, like Cafe at the End of the Internet. And another thing I've noticed too that comes up often when I was looking for publishers for Cafe at the End of the Internet was, well, does this link your short fiction to larger works that people can explore? No, I haven't really published anything larger yet. I'm still working on that. And so it was kind of a tough sell from the very beginning. And I think if you are going to go down this route, I would suggest doing it as you're writing your novel, and try to have the novel and the short story collection come out around the same time, so that way you have the larger work people can be invested in, and then the shorter works that people can go to later on. Maybe that's the wrong kind of advice, but it's advice that I would suggest. It seems to be more successful. And also make sure your collection isn't tiny. If it's like novella sized, or short novel sized, not too many people are going to want to buy it, right? Longer works, particularly those works around 50 to 60, even 70,000 words minimum, are going to be easier to sell, especially if you're an indie author. I would suggest a much larger work. And so if you don't have a lot of stories in your collection yet, hold on to it. Put it on ice for a little bit and really try to build it up and try to create something that's worthwhile. And another thing, edit the damn thing like crazy if you're indie. I'm kind of in that indie / professional, amateur, whatever hour. And that means a lot of the publishers I choose don't have the resources for the greatest editors in the world. And sometimes they miss a lot of stuff. And so it's up to you to edit as much as you can to give it to them, so that way they can give it a quick, clean edit and go from there. So the first thing I want to read, and on my trusty Kindle here, not advertising for Amazon, I actually hate the Kindle, at least this one. This one is just kind of bare bones and not the greatest. So I'll have to put my glasses on so I can actually read. And so there's going to be glare, and you guys are going to see my stuff on my screen, and then me looking at this down here. I want to read the obligatory introduction and kind of explain what I was feeling at the time, and basically what I thought of my collection, my stories, as I was getting ready to send them out to the publisher. So before reading this collection, you might be wondering, who is G. Michael Rapp? You could say I'm a failed novelist. I've spilt a good deal of ink on trying to nail down the perfect novel, the next big thing. The stories before you have, at one time or another, been the starts and fits of novels, novellas, grand epics, or even my take on the ever-elusive great American novel. They all failed and failed miserably in becoming what they were supposed to be, longer, more accomplished works. However, they were destined to become something else, something more, really. They have become part of an increasingly diverse collection of stories that clog my computer's desktop folders, various thumb drives and hard drives, and the occasional notebook or two. They have haunted me for years for various reasons, reasons that I can't quite explain now as I write this obligatory introduction for all of you. As I write this introduction, I am reminded of Alistair Reynolds' sage words when it comes to stories of all kinds. Most are failures, or worse than failures. Of the stories that are before you now, they all fail to become much larger works. They fail to produce what was required of them. Most authors will not willingly admit that they have so many failures under their name, under their pen, or their keyboard. I, however, am different. I've decided to bring together a collection of my failed beginnings, clippings, sketches, and the like before all of you. These are the very best of my failures, failures that have haunted me, and for good reasons. Like anything in life, false starts, failed beginnings, and failed endeavors help us grow as individuals. The same could be said of writers as well. These failings are not something to be ashamed of, although some would be ashamed of such things. No, instead, these failings should be something that allow us, especially writers, to build their lives around us into something wonderful, or at least practical. What you have before you is something beautiful. It may not be perfect, it certainly has its flaws, but it is something that has provided an amazing writing journey. I have learned, I have grown, and most of all, I have fashioned myself as a writer, here and now. Much of what is before you are a sort of cannibalization of my larger unsuccessful works. I have plumbed the depths for stories that were salvageable, worth reading, and not so abysmal failures. These are merely clippings, sketches, half-stories, and failed stories that have warranted my attention over the years while putting together this collection. I only hope that you enjoy them now as they are before you. If you like these failed stories, these failed beginnings, consider sharing them with your friends and family, or even your family's dog, which I thought was kind of funny. All right. So it got me thinking when I was writing this. I can say this. It was a bittersweet moment, right? It was one of those moments where, I'm getting published, but at the same time, do I deserve to be published? Is my work good enough? Am I actually giving a product that is worth people's money? And that's something that has always caused me a lot of consternation, is that I want to produce something that everyone wants to read. At least I hope. And then I find out not everyone wants to read it, and then there's that, And it was interesting that one of my friends said, it's not perfect, but he goes, fire it down range and see where it goes, right? See what happens, and it can only be a good learning experience. And I think that was the best thing about this, is it was a learning experience as an indie author, as a published author, as an author who has taken a long time to get stuff out there. And of course, it's been a great experience, don't get me wrong, but it's an experience that I probably would have waited a little bit more on, put a little bit more ice on it, and let it sit, let it ruminate a little bit before I put it out into the world. So my first story that I'm going to read you is called Nothing Remains of Eden, and it's actually about a character called Hephaestus. However, you don't get his name in this story. And Hephaestus is an immortal, and I see him as this kind of like far future immortal, somebody who's been cured of their mortality via science and medicine. And of course, Hephaestus is kind of a playback to Hephaestus, the Greek god, who's, I guess, the patron god of blacksmiths, or was. and was responsible for making, I believe, Achilles' shield, if I'm not mistaken. And anyway, so he's kind of removed from that quite a bit, and he mentions that in a later story that I won't read tonight, but I might read here in a couple weeks. And his name is older than most human civilizations at his point in life, and it's kind of cool. I always wanted to write about immortals. It was inspired by House of Suns, written by Alistair Reynolds. Yes, Alistair Reynolds, written in 2008, 2009, somewhere around there. And it deals with immortals, and they really don't die of, natural causes. They die of, human-related causes, being blown up or, getting shot into a sun or anything like that. And so Phasis is always getting into trouble. And so I really wanted to explore this issue of immortality and remembering things and maybe disremembering things or forgetting things. And so the story Nothing Remains of Eden was that take on it, and it was also a exploration of space opera. And it was supposed to be kind of the space opera-esque story. It didn't really have very much at stake, unfortunately, so it wasn't the greatest space opera story. But it's tangentially related to space opera, because the larger story arc is about something large at stake in the universe, and of course Phasis is kind of mixed in between it, and he can't understand why, because he can't remember exactly who he pissed off or whatever. So anyway, back to my tablet reading to all of you. There are a few things they prepare you for in life, especially in immortal life. Capture by armed hostiles is one of those life lessons I wish I had learned when I was still home. But again, wouldn't a life, especially an immortal one, with all the lessons learned, be boring? My captors are what we, in the Great Sutra, call meta-apes, one of mankind's greatest, or in my opinion, cruelest ideas for an under-evolved species. Meta-apes aren't usually the intelligent types, not by a long shot. In the Great Sutra, we generally stunt their intelligence, something about making other percipients feel morally and intellectually superior to their meta-ape counterparts. I won't bore you with the moral implications of stunting a sentient being's intelligence in order to make it subservient. Nevertheless, someone or something gave these meta-apes the thinking capabilities of base normal humans. An impressive feat if you consider the intricacies of the ape brain. Whoever did this knew where they needed to do the poking and prodding. The only problem is, I can't seem to remember any such characters having graced my existence with such unremitting brilliance. That is one of the many problems with being an immortal. You tend to forget things. That's the beauty of the human mind, really. Even after a few million years of tinkering around with the hardware, we humans still haven't managed to prevent the brain from forgetting. It's a blessing and a curse, to say the least. After what seems like hours, the largest meta-ape kicks me in the ribs. He grunts and points in the direction of the landing ramp. I look out at the landscape. It's an Edenic scene, with picture-perfect and almost surreal geology and geography, untouched or seemingly untouched by humans or those species we cohabitate with on the galactic level. The problem with sentience is that sentient beings tend to decide that the natural contours are ugly or worthless. It doesn't take me long to realize that there is a reason they have brought me here. I know this place from somewhere, where I can't quite recall. I curse my mammalian brain for its inadequacies, but I thank my captors for bringing me to a place that seems somewhat friendly to living and breathing organisms such as myself. Although I am indeed immortal, my body still requires the simple things like breathable atmosphere. Once my feet are planted firmly on the ground, the large meta-ape cuts my restraints and it shoves me in a random direction, away from the landing craft. I don't dare look back, for I fear this will be the end of my immortal life. I have seen the twinkling of time of some 500 kilo years. I have to say that a permanent death has had its calling from time to time, but now, while I walk away from the landing craft and down the gently sloping hill, I find that I fear death more than I realized. The landing craft doesn't stay long. I figure the meta-apes did what they were asked to do. Their job was complete. As for me, I am left with only a few tools at my disposal. The meta-apes didn't flush out the machines from my body. That means I can figure out where I am and where I need to go to survive on this rock in space. I let my machines do their work, and as they do what I've asked, I find a place to sit. The world around me is spectacular. In the distance, it appears to be a binary of some kind moving with its dancing partner through the vacuum of space. The sun of this system is but a small orb off in the distance. The binary itself must be contained within a special field, something used to trap heat and magnify the intensity of the system's sun. The same field must be what's holding the atmosphere in place. If that field wasn't there, I'd be dead by now, a lifeless corpse. The thought of death at this moment forces me to reconsider why I have been brought here. Each inquiry leads to more questions than answers, questions that my immortal brain cannot seem to answer. I continue to wait until my machines have done calculating, analyzing, comparing data lodged deep in my skeleton. A slight fever gradually takes hold of my body, causing me to shudder and sweat. I ignore it, knowing full well that the machines are doing their work and that I'm not being attacked by some fast-acting foreign agent. The scenery below reminds me of something I cannot grasp. The jagged terrain, the slow-moving river, and the greenery are all familiar to me now. Again, my immortal brain cannot figure out why I am here. My fever breaks when the machines are finished with their work. They come up blank, nothing from the effort. I sigh. I guess this is where I've come to die. Not a bad place considering. I push myself up from my seat and move downward toward the river and away from the plateau where the landing craft dropped me off. The happenstance of the geology intrigues me. It reminds me of the old tales my grandmothers used to tell me about gods and a universe controlled, built, and refined by an intelligent architect. What those stories forgot, and what I see here before me, is happenstance. There is a beauty to randomness, to the chaos that rules over our lives. However, there is something about this geology that tickles my brain. It's not entirely random. Some of it has the hand of an architect in it. Someone, something, decided to envelop this binary with a field and breathe life into it. Outside of that, randomness prevails. After nearly 3 hours, I find myself sitting by the wide, slow-moving river. There I find something my machines pick up right away. Some bit of scripture, faded and nearly unnoticeable. Welcome to Eden, the scripture reads, God's greatest garden. All right. So that was a story that a number of people actually liked, and it was put in a contest at the Space Opera Writers Facebook group, and it actually never went anywhere. It kind of just fizzled. And it's an interesting work because it, like I said, it deals with this idea of immortality. It was inspired by actually a space opera-esque picture, and it was supposed to be kind of a space opera tale, or at least the beginning of it, and people hated it. But I like it because it's got a little bit of spunk, a little bit of character, if you will, and I think that is something that's important for all of us who are writing stories. Is, write for yourself first, and then you edit and revise later to create a story that is something others want to read as well. And even if others don't want to read it, at least you've got an audience of one. That's you, right? And then, of course, you add mom and dad and a few other family members in there, and you got yourself a sizable audience. May not be the greatest audience in the world or the audience that you want, but they'll be there for you. So, all right. The next piece that I'm going to read is Another Day at Dan's Box Office. Now, this is what I call now punk. It's kind of contemporary science fiction in the sense that it's within the next 20, 30 years, if that far into the future. I would say no more than 10, to be honest, now that I think about it. And this was inspired by my work called Llano Estacado, which is the local area here. It is the Great Plains, desert plains. And these desert plains, of course, are like tableland, and they go on for hundreds of miles. And Coronado, who first saw them, said they go on for some 300 leagues without relief. That they were so large that he just considered them a vast desert, a desert that wasn't even worth exploring. When the Americans took over the area, the Llano Estacado was basically called the Great Sahara of North America. It was monotonous, plain Jane property that nobody inhabited, even the indigenous peoples of this continent. And of course, that has caused all sorts of problems. And it's interesting now, the Llano Estacado is inhabited by a few 100,000 people, if you count it correctly. And this 100,000 or so people live in a place that is dry, it's very conservative, and it's quite boring. And of course, we're lucky here in Clovis. We've got fiber optic internet, so we can connect with the world a little bit faster and stream things. But then there are some people who aren't that lucky, that live out in the middle of nowhere, and that's my dog barking, by the way, who live out in the middle of nowhere, who don't really have internet connections, don't really have much. There's still old school movie stores around here, even though Netflix is around, and Redbox and a few others. But I remember when I first moved here, they still had a movie gallery. When movie gallery was shutting down everywhere, it still had like a mom and pop style movie store, which unfortunately is getting shut down by the owners because there's not really demand anymore. And it's just funny. It just seems like a land out of time, or land that's just kind of behind the times. So Another Day at Dan's Box Office is an exploration of that place. That place that is the Llano Estacado in the next 5, 10, maybe 15 years. And it's a time when bandwidth is expensive, when people are nostalgic and going back to DVDs and videos and everything else. And Dan's Box Office is kind of like one of those movie stores that's still around because it fulfills a need that the internet can't anymore, because the internet's broken, or at least it's envisioned to be broken in this story. So, shall we begin? Yes, we shall. Okay, so Staff Sergeant Sadler's Bomby-Ba plays on the 20-year-old boombox my boss keeps behind the counter, stocked with a single CD, The Ballads of the Green Berets. The song's upbeat melody almost makes my current situation manageable, even tolerable to a point. I stand behind the dusty plywood and particle board checkout counter of the local Dan's Box Office, formerly Cheap Picks, movie rental store. It's just around the corner from Llano Estacado State University, or Llano State, or LeSU for those who are familiar with the university. A black and white television screen flickers next to the cash register. A half dozen video feeds pipe in on the TV screen. They're boring, sluggish films with odd camera angles and poor video quality. The video feeds are a peace of mind measure the boss installed after the last armed robbery. The counter's laminate surface is warped and bubbled in spots, adding to the feeling of dereliction that customers confront when they stand in line for their movie rentals. The smell of human sweat, mildew, mildewed carpet, and caliche dust cling to the refrigerated air, stinging my half-awake nostrils. Dan's box office on Main and Yano Avenue is the kind of place that I'd like to burn to the ground. Before you judge me for contemplating arson, let me tell you something. Today is the third Tuesday in October. I've been up since dawn with about 2 hours of sleep from the night before. Don't feel sorry for me, though. My father used to say if you want sympathy, you can find it in the dictionary between shit and syphilis. I'm sure all of you'll be using that tomorrow at work. Anyways, I digress. I was up late thumping my brain into generating some concepts for a potential film that I want to submit to a festival in Santa Fe. I couldn't come up with anything. To make matters worse, my Ritalin stash went dry the other day. I don't take Ritalin for anything in particular. I don't even use it outside of work. I only take it because it does wonders on my mind, especially when I'm working a solid 8 to 7 shift at the movie store. I achieve the penultimate subliminal mindfuck, where my body feels like it has been encased in wet concrete and thrown into the event horizon of a supermassive black hole. But my mind is alert and spinning. I'm talking about full-blown mental quagmire. It makes my time at Dan's a whole lot easier and somewhat pleasant. But today I have Staff Sergeant Sadler for company. It's his calm, soothing voice that keeps me from going off the walls. Aside from my stash being depleted, today is like any other day for me. My mind keeps cycling through the thoughts of arson and pulling a can of whoop-ass on the boss man when he comes in for his weekly visit. My mind usually succumbs to the arson fantasy. I like fire. Us pyros don't question our reasons. It's fire. It's awesome. There's something about starting a fire. My inner caveman comes out when I play with fire, whether it be when I gather kindling or when I coax the sparks to life, that and an irresistible urge to masturbate. I'm sure the two aren't related in any way. Anyways, I have been through the arson fantasy twice already in the last 4 hours. It passes the time and saves me from those menial tasks the boss man sees fit for all of his underpaid peons. I can see myself pouring gasoline over the stacks of secondhand movies and Southeast Asian and West African counterfeits the boss man says he buys from his Pakistani Muslim feller in Dallas. I don't think the guy's Muslim or Pakistani. I've answered the Dallas guy's phone calls once or twice. His name sounds Vietnamese, and I'm sure after a few choice words the man is an atheist or pretty damn close to one. But who knows? I'm no world traveler. The boss man doesn't seem to care about the Dallas guy's nationality or religion. Everyone's a Muslim or a godless communist, especially if they aren't white and from those states south of the 3630 and north of the Mexican border. It's an understanding of geography that boggles the mind. The sound of a cheap plastic lighter trips me up. The click of the lighter's trigger fills my head. The distinctive snapping, scratching sound as steel and flint rub against one another to create a bluish-purple butane flame causes my heart to race. The gasoline catches with only a bit of coaxing. Then I hear the roar of the fire consuming old-school DVDs, Blu-ray discs, hyperdiscs, and the new vinyl we're trying to sell customers who are into such things, and the high-pitched wail of fire engine sirens. The whole episode ends with me skipping home like a goddamn loony and screwing to Maya until we're left panting and wheezing on our unmade bed. I almost went through it with it once. The gasoline and the plastic lighter sat in my truck for a few weeks, months ago. It was an episode from one of those terrible crime dramas that kept me from committing arson. Again, it's one of those terrible shows that Amaya makes me watch every Friday night or date night. You know the ones I'm talking about. The cops have kick-ass guns, shooting now and asking questions later. Their badges are shiny gold shields effaced with neatly arranged numbers and letters. Their hair never seems to get messed up no matter the situation. They caught a guy once because he used gasoline to torch his workplace. It was a sign from the television gods portending what might happen to me. I don't hold the local PD to the same standard as flashy movie stars with slick guns and shiny badges, but I don't feel like testing their competence. No, arson is out of the question. Arson is too easy to pin on the disgruntled employee. That means one of my coworkers would probably out me to the boys in blue. Then I'd be in the big house and end up being the prison wife of some guy named Bubba or Charlie. Don't ask me about their names. I read an article somewhere saying that guys named Bubba or Charlie are usually monsters in the pen. So what if it was a blog post? Sue me. I like my mundane job and life at Dan's box office far too much. I think I would miss Amaya the most and those crappy shows that she makes me watch during our late night, Friday night date nights. There's something about going over to her place and vegging out on the couch, slurping down an icy cold, high fructose, corn syrup laced drink. I don't think the prison offers that kind of conjugal visit. I could be wrong, though. Even if the cops didn't pin it on me, I'd end up amongst the unemployed. My current lifestyle won't allow me to willingly join the ranks of the unemployed. Rent, student loan repayments, my internet porn habits, and those delish 72-ounce Senor Chunder Gulpums sold at the local gas stations require some source of steady income, even if it's a shit job like the one I've got right now. I also have my film to think about. I don't think panhandling for change will pay for the electricity and hardware I need to finish it up before submission deadline. But I'm sure it would make for a great story in The Filmmaker. I haven't dealt with a single customer this morning. People aren't flooding the store to feed their hunger for kitschy pornos, low-budget cult classics, blockbusters with plastic movie stars and large FX budgets, or those thin-mint box sets of old television shows. I started making sketches of a new computer I might build. I use scraps of blank receipt paper and golf pencils for my sketches. They don't look all that bad. I used to keep a blog back in college. It was a hardware hacking and DIY website. That was before I got the stick when it came to the bandwidth. Haven't messed with it much since. I'm considering starting it back up again. The computer I'm sketching might make for a great post. That's if I can afford the bandwidth. My problem is that net neutrality didn't pan out. It died before I got to really know what it meant to roam a truly free and unrestrained internet. The internet access became a commodity that few can actually afford without government subsidies and regulations. At noon, I grabbed my usual lunch from the sandwich shop down the street. I get my usual, a 12-inch sub with mounds of sliced chicken, cucumbers, tomatoes, chili peppers, and wasabi ranch and Thai pepper sauce. I wash it all down with a diet Senor Chunder mini gulp, which leaves a metallic aftertaste in my mouth. I'm guessing it has to do something with the artificial sweetener. Yuck. It'll probably give me cancer, but I'm holding out that the singularity, which happens to be a few years away, will arrive before that happens. I hope I will be able to upload my mind into a cybernetic avatar before the cancer kills off my organic body. Hashtag death is a disease. Hashtag we must cure it. It's 2:30 or so when things get better. An old college friend, Raylan Fred Sosi, walks through the double doors with the Texan Jesus sticker sporting a six-shooter and cowboy boots. Fred's in her 30s and from the Dene Reservation near Tuba City, Arizona. She's got one hell of a storytelling ability, making her the best goddamn game master in eastern New Mexico and western Texas region. She ain't bad looking either. Her dark complexion, her hazel eyes complement her gorgeous shoulder-length hair. It's in a ponytail today. I still have no idea why she goes by Fred. The name change happened after college. Who the hell knows? You remember when we'd hit the lobby in the dorm and play Valkyrie's Song Man? She asks. I nod, feeling myself smile. Valkyrie's Song, a mesh reality role-playing game, is one of my fondest memories from college. A half dozen or so friends would gather around a small table, laughing, solving puzzles, telling stories, rolling dice, butchering goblins and orcs by the thousands, and consuming tankards of imaginary mead at the Goblin's Head Inn. We'd order pizza and bring every kind of refreshment we could think of. By the end of each gaming session, the RAs broke up our fun like riot police dispersing a crowd of protesters. They usually came after someone complained about late-night noises. Strewn paper, haphazardly thrown dice, and empty bottles of pop littered the lobby floor. It was the greatest break from reality one had at Llano State, especially for those of us refusing to ditch around with school-sponsored events or sanctioned groups. The group's members ignored the harsh taunts, the occasional homosexual joke, and even a Jesus freak or two rattling on about their damned souls needing God or some zombie messiah named Jesus Christ. Yeah, I say, I remember Valkyrie song. You thinking about getting a group together or something? Fred shakes her head. Nah, man. I was just getting a bit nostalgic the other day and started surfing the web for old school RPGs. Find anything good, I ask, knowing that Fred rarely shares her findings with me. She likes to keep those things a secret before designated game nights. Not really, man. Saw one that looked cool. It was something called The Adventures of Gonzo the Robochimp and the D-Team. That's pretty fucking legit, dude. The Adventures of Gonzo the Robochimp and the D-Team is my favorite stream on the net. The stream ain't cheap either. I often have to buy double the bandwidth in order to watch each stream when they drop, so I don't get too far behind. It is, Fred admits, with a smirk. Is it based off the cartoon, I asked, already knowing the answer? Sure is, man, Fred answers, leaning up against the counter. We need to try it out soon. Hell yeah, bro, I say. The conversation lulls for a few moments. The hum of the air conditioner is the only discernible noise in the rental store. Mine and Fred's eyes meet like two billiard balls before bouncing off one another, heading in different directions. Any luck with the student loans? Fred asks, hoping to start another conversation. I shake my head. Still underwater, I say. Sucks, man. You need any help? She asks. I don't say anything. I don't like talking with Fred about my money troubles. It's not easy to explain how each year I make about a fifth of what she makes in a month. I got some extra dough burning a hole in my pockets, Edric, Fred offers. I can help out, dude. I shake my head. Nah, I'm good, bro. No, you're not, Fred fires back. You're getting fucked over, man. True dat, I sigh. I doubt you can help out, though. Why is that? It's not the goddamn loans that are killing me, Fred, I say. What is, she asks. Every motherfucking thing else, I say. Fred laughs. It's another thing I like about her. It's one of those all-of-a-sudden occurrences. The laugh starts deep in the pit of her stomach before bursting from her mouth. Her eyes scrunch up and her tongue flails around like a worm on a hook. Sounds about right, dude, she says before laughing some more and then finally catching her breath. I'll probably have to rob a bank or start kidnapping people, I say. I can do you one better, Fred says. You interested? It depends, I answer. Does it involve male prostitution or being a drug mule for an international cartel? Nothing like that, bro, Fred answers with a chuckle. I need help setting up computers for mining. You're the guy I thought of. Why, I say, leaning on my right arm. Mining is a waste of hardware. It's the digital version of slavery, working good machines into the ground for the promise of funny money. I know, Fred says, but you need the money and I need a guy who knows his fucking hardware. When you say it like that, I know. How much will you pay me, I ask. You get 30% plus salary, Fred offers. How does that sound? I want a workroom and my own hardware and equipment, I say, knowing that Fred will give me anything I ask. I know it won't happen. This is the third time she has offered me a stake in her company. Like the previous times, I know I can't join her mining operation. There's too much between us, too much that I can't ignore even though I'm desperate for money. Deal, Fred says with a shake of her head. Come over to my place after work. I nod. I think I can manage that, I say. See you at 8:30, she asks. Probably closer to 10, I reply. Got to see Amaya first. What happened to Bros Before Hoes, man? That was college, Fred. So what? I'm sure you like her, I say. You two are a lot alike. I don't think so, Fred says, stepping back from the counter. No one has all this. You should dump that hoe and go to where it's at. I don't think I can do that, Fred, I say, chuckling a bit. Thanks for the offer, though. Why? I shake my head. You know why. Fred knows why I can't leave Amaya and go at it again with her. My girlfriend has always been a point of contention between the two of us. Before Amaya came into the picture, Fred and I were two gaming buddies, without ties to the real world, playing whenever or whatever we wished. Our relationship was more than that, of course. We had a few drunken moments in college with clothes being tossed or flung about the small dorm room and shaking hands, exploring body parts. We'd spend the weekend sliding up and down rough sheets. Navy blue sheets looked like Jackson Pollock paintings. We held hands and kissed, but it was never official and never romantic. Fred always backed away, or I did. She wanted to keep her distance. She only wanted to be a friend and not much else. I didn't want much else either. With Amaya in the picture, Fred hasn't been easy to deal with. She keeps pressing for the good old days. She wants to play role-playing games until the sun rises. She wants to build some crazy gizmo and test it out in an abandoned parking lot. She wants those drunken moments between two lonely friends in a cramped dorm room back. Our game nights are now run past the girlfriend, something Fred hates. Amaya doesn't understand why grown-ups want to fondle dice, play with plastic miniatures, and crack jokes for hours on end. Amaya doesn't like the idea of Fred and me being together alone. She thinks something's there, a spark that might start everything up again. She has a point. I guess that works, bro, Fred says with a heavy sigh. Laters, dude. Laters, I say. Once Fred leaves, I begin checking DVD, Blu-ray, and hyperdisc cases. I figure it's time to make some kind of effort. I can't jerk off all day. That'd give the boss the wrong impression. I'm all about making at least one good impression per day. It's a job security thing. Anyways, I like checking cases. It gives me a chance to mess around with the customers and stick one to the boss. To keep customers on their toes, I put discs in the wrong cases, especially when I have to sort through the pornos. It's a guilty pleasure I have, the only one I truly enjoy about working in a movie store. I've come up with a special system, a system I use on occasion to mess around with customers. The system's organized according to a plan I came up with when I doubled my dose of Ritalin a few years ago. The softcore porn is placed in the cases of its hardcore relative. Hardcore goes into the cases of romantic comedies. Romantic comedies are shoved into the cases of horror films. Pulse-pounding, explosion-laden thrillers are put into the cases of old lady musicals like The Sound of Music. Politically motivated documentaries are one of my favorites. I'm not what you would call political, but I like messing around with those who are, especially those old bird Trumpites who believe Reagan, Bush 1, Bush 2, and Trump are the greatest presidents America ever had. They rant things like UN conspiracy, the Trump years, one world under Red China, and whatnot. I switch out these pieces of conservative porn with what customers deem pinko communist propaganda or unpatriotic anti-American bullshit. This usually includes things like liberating the fuck out of people, choking on carbon, why we need to think green, and my personal favorite, a documentary history of proletarian struggles, dawn of civilization to 2005. I swear an angry Trumpite nearly died from an embolism when he came back to return the disc I gave him. I don't just pick on conservatives, though. I'm what you'd call an equal opportunity offender. Wholesome Christian films with Christian values and Bible thumping get atheist treatments, or introductory films to religions like Islam and Zoroastrianism. Pro-Israel disc cases are filled with documentaries about Palestinian struggles or IDF war crimes. I really like messing with the limousine liberals, too. They're the types who like being called liberal and supposedly hate anything to do with capitalism, pollution, conservatism, and big business, or so they say. This is ironic considering most hate the working man and drive giant gas-guzzling land yachts. This prompts a special sort of disc mix-ups from the neoconservative collection at Dan's box office. These include titles like America, Christian Country, An Open Letter to Liberal Pussies. If you don't like it, don't like America, get the hell out, and a 3-hour TV special on Hyperdisc covering everything Milton Friedman, Ludwig von Mises, and Friedrich Hayek, and the importance of deregulation and laissez-faire capitalism. It's always nice to see the faces of confused or infuriated customers coming back to resolve the disc mix-up. It keeps things interesting around the store, and I often give the customers a 3-day rental for free. That keeps him coming back for more and serves as a big fuck you to Dan. Everyone's wondering why movie stars are still around. Hell, I'm asking myself the same thing these days, more than I would like to admit. I think it has to do with a couple of things. First, the internet is a broken piece of shit. No joke. You buy bandwidth, and it always seems to be running out. Then if you go over, you're throttled by your carrier, or worse. Second, our monkey brains like the idea of having something tangible in our hands. We like things, junk as it were, even if that junk happens to be crappy Thin Mint cases with the latest TV show to disc hit. Then you have the whole issue of porn. Online porn is expensive. It used to be free. Go figure. Anyways, nowadays you have to pay extra on top of the bandwidth usage to get your porn fix. Why not go to the local movie rental store? We don't judge you. We really don't. We understand your mammalian desire to watch others in the heat of the moment. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong at all. Welcome to Dan's Box Office. We're here to serve you, the consumer of cheap porn, flashy blockbusters, and the latest season's hottest TV show you're too cheap or too busy to watch when it's actually on the airwaves. My boss stops by a few hours following Fred's visit. I missed the signs foretelling Dan's arrival. The parking lot pigeons, fighting over day-old French fries, usually squawk louder and flutter their wings when he comes by. Sometimes a divine wind turns up a small dust storm in the adjacent alleyway, warning me of Dan's impending arrival. Dan's built like a silverback gorilla and has a 3-pack-a-day smoking habit that makes him smell like an ungodly creature that escaped from the pits of Hades. He's one of those people who believe in divinely ordained hierarchical order, old school discipline, and above all, being a hard ass to anyone who happens to be working one of his subpar movie rental stores. I hate Dan, but I tolerate him in order to keep this shitty job. The girlfriend wouldn't understand why I'd quit or get fired from such a cushy job. Cush meaning a job that requires the attention span and intelligence of a goldfish or an earthworm. Plus, my film project needs a little infusion of cold, hard cash to make it to the finish line. That's the real reason why I stay here. Every time Dan comes in, I'm reminded of the creatures I used to slay in Valkyrie's song. The boss's girth and smell could be his monster traits. The Game Master, a.k.a. Fred, can add stats for Dan's baldness and earthquaking step. I can almost imagine fighting something like that in Valkyrie's song. I could bring an end to all those years of condescending language and being called boy with my high-level rogue or righteous, heathen-smiting paladin. With a few rolls of the dice, polyhedric dice, a spell or two for good measure, the boss would drop dead, his lifeless eyes rolling into the back of his apish skull. The gurgling sounds of death would linger in the air of the dungeon. The Game Master could then divvy up well-earned loot and experience points amongst the group's players. The group would go on to the next challenge. A few of my problems would be over then. I could possibly focus on the student loan people next, slaying collection staff left and right, burning loan documents and looting office cubicles along the way. Do you get everything dusted in the back room? Dan's voice booms. I nod, forcing myself to look at the boss's pudgy face and bald, sweating scalp. Maybe the Game Master could add statistics for the boss's blinding scalp. Abandon all hope, ye who look at boss's scalp, for the scourge of blindness will surely follow. Good boy, Dan booms. I'll be back next week. If you got any problems around here, just call Jimmy. Jim will be on call for the week. I'm a-fixin' to head to the lake, so don't be pestering me with any calls. You hear? Will do, boss, I say with a shit-eating grin. Be sure to reorganize the pornos in the back, won't you? I want to make sure customers can find what they're looking for. Hell, I'm sure they're not too picky about what they find back there. It's not like they're watching that shit for the acting or the story or nothing. Will do, boss, I say, repeating my oft-used line. Anything else I can do for you? Sure enough, Dan yells back, don't fuck up anything while I'm gone. See you next week. Happy fishing, boss, I say. Remember, it's all in the swing. Dan doesn't reply. He waddles his way toward the double glass door with the Texan Jesus sticker, promos for new releases, and a decal for a non-existent security system. It takes the boss a bit to push the door open and squeeze his girth through the door frame. A bewildered customer watches the spectacle, not realizing she's staring at the store's owner, Dan. Dan finally manages to push himself through the aluminum door frame, drenched in sweat and panting like a true smoker from the whole ordeal. The confused customer follows Dan with her eyes, watching him waddle over to his pearl-colored Cadillac Escalade, where he heaves himself into the leather driver's seat. The customer enters the video shop after the boss's tires squeal out of the movie store's western parking lot. The woman reproduces a case for a new release romantic comedy. Another satisfied customer at Dan's box office, I think to myself. Sir, the woman says in a soft, almost inaudible voice, I was a bit surprised to find a pornographic film in the case when I got home. We didn't realize it until we popped it into the player. Let me see that, I say. The customer hands over the case. I open it and find a disc labeled Diggin' Deep 5, the ultimate anal sex compilation. Another customer proudly served by Edric McDonald, the movie guru. I apologize, ma'am. This happens from time to time, I lie. I'll get you the right disc. I do appreciate it, the woman chirps. One other thing, yeah? Your next rental is on the house. That's wonderful, the woman says. Her face brighter now, but my husband and I really enjoyed it. Can you find me another one? Sure can, ma'am, I say. That's why I'm here. All right. So we're at the hour point. 2 stories in. That was another day at Dan's box office, which is probably going to get me in trouble one of these days when people actually read it. But I don't care. It's good. It's fun. It's one of those stories that I really love. I really like watching people listen to it. And they giggle to themselves, and they kind of nod, and they understand this guy's plight, and so that's always fun. I have a few other stories I want to go and read. We won't read all of the stories I have on my list tonight because I figure I'll leave that for another night. And we'll probably stop at the half-hour mark because my voice is starting to go. Ah. So, anyways, let me check the stream. I think we're good. Yeah, we're good. Awesome. So, we're still at an hour and some change. I envision going for about another half hour and then probably taking a break for the night. So I'm thinking I'm going to read Backup Rocket Man, The Jewish Garbage Man, and Sketches of the Desert. So these are more contemporary pieces as well. Sketches of the Desert is one of my favorites, and so I will start with that one first. Sketches of the Desert is something I wrote on my car ride between Fort Sumner and Vaughn, New Mexico. And if you've ever been on that road, you'll understand the imagery here. If you've never been on that road, then of course this is going to be new to you. And I'm trying to find it on my Kindle, and of course it's not giving me my location. Okay. It's here somewhere, guys. Just a second. So anyways, the imagery that I really like about this piece is that it, if it'll go to that piece for me, is that it deals with the high elevation desert that we have around here in eastern New Mexico. And eastern New Mexico, if you've never been there, is a flat plain of desert prairie. And like Coronado said, there is nothing to give you alleviation from this. So that's the beauty of it, but at the same time, the kind of the sheer terror of it as well. If you've ever been here, you understand that. If you've never been here, well, one day if you ever travel, go through eastern New Mexico and tell me how well you like it. I always think if the hills have eyes sometimes. I mean, it's a beautiful area, but some days you wonder. So, sketches of the desert.